Anarchy, a highly skilled jester playing to the gallery, Dalrymple's jaundiced revisionism about British East India Company, gerund of book reviews. Dalrymple is a man who cannot be taken seriously because he writes to please the gallery. Dalrymple totally misses the fact that Nader Shah of Persia had agreed to spare Delhi and accept a ransom amount, but was persuaded to sack and plunder Delhi by Sadat Ali Khan, the Mughal governor of Awadh. How serious historians can evade and omit such basic facts is mind boggling. Dalrymple totally misses the greatest betrayal in the Indian history at Karnal, where Nader Shah of Persia, on prompting of Nawab of Awadh, Sadat Khan decided to pillage and plunder Delhi after an initial agreement to return to Persia after being paid a relatively small fine. Dalrymple spends great energy on the Bengal famine of 1770 and vilifying the company, but fails to reconcile the fact that a far greater famine broke out in Bengal under the British Crown. His treatment of events reeks with extreme polemics and subjectivism. An Indian author had thus defined the greatest treachery in Indian Muslim history, which this most intellectually dishonest man omitted as below. Quote, Sadat Khan eventually, by paying 2 crores of rupees, obtained the appointment he had all along quietly coveted, with that of Amir ul Isa, Wazir of Delhi. But the attainment of this ambition brought out his worst qualities, though fortunately for his former reputation and for those brought under his influence, his career of oppression and cruelty did not last long. His treasonable advice to Nader Shah mainly led to Nader's disgraceful work of spoliation at Delhi. Unquote. All the treasure and jewels of the imperial court were taken, and everyone who did not make a clean breast of his wealth was tortured most unmercifully. An illustrated historical album of the Rajas and Talukdars of Awadh by Daroga Haji Abbas Ali, printed by Northwestern Provinces and Awadh Government Press in 1880. Another eminent Indian author described Muslim treachery of Sadat Ali Khan as below. He tempted Nader Shah with a promise to extort about rupees 20 crores from Delhi. Nader Shah decided to take a chance. He, he appointed Sadat Khan as the Wakil Mutlaq and asked him to take the charge of Delhi. Later on, Delhi was completely destroyed by Nader Shah. Nader Shah had gone with his army to Delhi to collect money. In Delhi, a rumor suddenly spread that Nader Shah had died, so a mob attacked one of his troops of 3,000 people. A bullet narrowly missed Nader Shah himself when he was going to the mosque to pray. Nader Shah retaliated by ordering a general massacre in which several thousand of innocent people were killed and large scale properties were destroyed. Nadir Shah also sent his men to Awadh to bring Sadat Khan's money. Humiliated by Nadir Shah, Sadat Khan committed suicide on 20th March 1739. Unquote. The life and times of the Nawabs of Awadh. Dalrymple is master in spinning exaggerated yarns about British treachery, but has no time for Indian Muslim treachery, which far exceeded British treachery. On page 12, there is a small typing error placing 3rd Mysore War victory of Cornwallis in 1782 rather than 1792. Strangely, Dalrymple even inserting a biographical note on Nawab Sadat Ali Khan, whose treachery and low character far outmatched any British actor, including Clive. In describing Aurangzeb on page 13, Dalrymple misses the most essential fact that it was the Hindu Maratha insurgency that laid foundations of decline and fall of the Mughal Empire. Charmless and puritanical Mughal emperor whose overly ambitious conquest of the Deccan first brought Mughal dominions to their wildest extent, widest extent, then led to their eventual collapse. His alienation of the empire's Hindu population and especially the Rajput allies by his religious bigotry accelerated the collapse of the empire after his death. Now, this is a shallow analysis and it totally omits the Marathas, the real cause of the Mughal decline and failure. In this regard, Rajputs, etc., were Mickey Mouse players, and the real hero of Hindu resurgence was Shivaji. Degradingly describes Muhammad Shah, but fails to note that under his tenure, the Mughals defeated Ahmad Shah Abdali at Sirhind in 1748. Says effort Mughal aesthete whose administrative carelessness and lack of military talent led to his defeat by the Persian warlord Nadir Shah at the Battle of Karnal in 1739. Nadir Shah looted Mughal Delhi, taking with him the peacock throne into which was embedded the legendary Kohinoor diamond. He returned to Persia, leaving Muhammad Shah a powerless king with an empty treasury and the Mughal Empire bankrupt and fractured beyond repair. Now, always make shallow analysis, never goes into details. Battle of Buxar took place in 1764 and not in 1765, as Mr. Dalrymple states on page 16. On page 60, Dalrymple fallaciously states that Bhonsla was in charge of Odisha, whereas the Bhonsla citadel was many hundred miles from Odisha to the west in Nagpur. Dalrymple is addicted to false fantasies, thus, he projects the Mughals as the height of civilization, while these so called civilized Mughals in 1719 publicly tortured Banda Sahib's 5-year-old son, gouging out his heart while the child was alive and shoving it in his father's mouth. Nadir Shah did not invade Afghanistan in 1739 but in 1738 via Helmand, as it was a long way from Delhi. But our brilliant and careless writer states that he did so in 1739. Worst is his treatment of military events, like describing First Anglo-Mysore War. He glorifies Hyder Ali but fails to note that Hyder Ali lost in every pitched battle to Colonel Smith and won only because of lack of cavalry by the company as well as extreme corruption of the company's officials. Dalrymple spends great energy on the famine of Bengal in 1770 and vilifying the company, but fails to reconcile the fact that a far greater famine broke out in Bengal under the British Crown. His treatment of event reeks with extreme polemics and subjectivism. Worst is his treatment of military events like in describing First Anglo-Mysore War. He glorifies Hyder Ali but fails to note that he lost in various pitched battles to Colonel Smith and won only because of lack of cavalry by the company as well as extreme corruption of the company's officials. Dalrymple's treatment of military history is atrocious. Like in discussing Second Anglo-Mysore War, he only discusses one battle, Polilore, whereas totally ignores the fact that Hyder Ali totally was repeatedly defeated at Porto Novo, Sholingar, etc. by Sir Eyre Coote. Dalrymple totally forgets the fact that while the company lost one battle in 1780, the Second Anglo-Mysore War continued till 1784 and was inconclusive. Dalrymple's use of historic facts is one-sided and extremely biased. Ahmad Shah Abdali never went to Delhi in 1762, so Dalrymple's claim that he ousted Ahmadul Malik in 1762 is incorrect. By and large, the book is a repetition of well-known facts of British Indian history. However, Dalrymple has wasted a book in vain. It brings out nothing new. His whole conclusion about the company and the title of the book, Anarchy, is extremely questionable and debatable. Now, says Dalrymple, this book has attempted to study the relationship between commercial and imperial power. It has looked at how corruption can impact on politics and vice versa. It has examined how power and money can corrupt and the way commerce and colonization have so often walked in lockstep. For Western imperialism and corporate capitalism were born at the same time, and both were to some extent the dragon's teeth that spawned the modern world. Such was the disruption caused in the 18th century India by advent of the East India Company that a whole new literary genre was invented to deal with it. This is the genre of moralizing histories known as the Book of Admonition or Ibratnama. The admonitory purpose of these histories was put secondly by Khairuddin Allahabadi, the author of the best known such volume, as Fardid Sarguzasht Guzashtan Barkhud Ibrat Pazirad. By considering the past lives, take heed for your own future. The East India Company remains history's most ominous warning about the potential for the abuse of corporate power and the insidious means by which the interest of shareholders can seemingly become those of the state. For, for as recent American adventures in Iraq have shown, our world is far from post imperial and quite probably never will be. Unquote. Firstly, English East India Company did not cause anarchy in India. Dalrymple repeatedly tries to prove India was in complete anarchy when the British company became a serious player. Delhi was sacked more than 40 times between 1737 and 1800 by non British forces, but Dalrymple is blind to this hard fact. All the bad things he sees are only to be found in the English East India Company. His military knowledge is myopic and he constantly distorts military history and uses bits and pieces to prove or disprove as he wills at whim. As a matter of fact, the company restored order in India. First three universities in Indian history were founded at Calcutta, Madras, and Bombay in 1856-57. Outmoded customs like widow burning, infanticide were abolished by the company. A hereditary class of feudals was created by Lord Cornwallis in 1792, as a result of which Pol- political stability was introduced and strengthened in India. The company had many reformers, philanthropists, utilitarians, but Dalrymple, in his irrational hatred, is blind to all these people. To Dalrymple, all that British East India Company did was bad, and he has an extremely jaundiced and twisted vision. Dalrymple gives no weightage to the fact that British Parliament had and system prosecuted Clive and Warren Hastings and tried to regulate India. Above all, Dalrymple forgets that without the driving spirit of corporate enterprise of the company, the British would not never have conquered India. While personal interest has constantly dominated human conduct in history, whether it was a company or a state, Dalrymple wears colored glasses and his perception is cloudy as well as confused. Lastly, my serious issue with Dalrymple is his oversimplistic, sweeping judgments. Mughals were as big opportunists as the company. They were a small group kicked out of Central Asia and captured India or North India, just like the British company, because of superior military tactics. If you look at Mughal contributions, you find only Taj Mahal or Shalimar Bagh in Lahore, whereas the British company gave India irrigation, universities, a sound military system, a system of governance, and social classes like feudals who made the system more stable. Another point that Dalrymple totally misses is that the company saved the Indian Muslims from total political extinction. The Muslims were nobodies by 1800. Delhi was Maratha ruled. Badshahi Masjid of Lahore was a horse stable and a powder magazine. The Marathas and Sikhs totally dominated North India, but a knight in shining armor comes and saves the Indian Muslims. Lake saves Delhi. Hugh Gough saves Lahore and Peshawar's Muslims. But Dalrymple misses out all these things. Dalrymple's most serious failure is that greed and avarice is not a British company failing but a human failing, and all Indian rulers were guilty of these failings. Dalrymple fails to appreciate that Indians gladly fought against Indians under the company because the company paid salaries in time. Dalrymple fails to note that the British company's triumphs were triumphs of organization, where Lieutenant Flint repeatedly defeated Tipu Sultan with a 100% Indian force at Vandi Vash post. Dalrymple fails to appreciate that India was conquered by an organizationally superior company using 80% Indian manpower. Why Indians followed the British company if they were so evil, as Dalrymple believes or wants us to believe? Today, what we are seeing in Pakistan is far worse than what any British company could have done to this region. No one is safe in Pakistan. Anyone who dares to speak the truth can be abducted by the state security agencies. This scribe who retired as a major is getting less than 100 US dollars per month pension, which is good only for starvation and death. But intellectually dishonest characters like Dalrymple can exaggerate and paint false pictures just to sell his books. And lastly, Dalrymple fails to relate to what happened after the British left. Pakistan, where I live, is the most corrupt state in the world. Pakistan's tax officials of the so called FBR are 1 billion times more corrupt than English East India Company could be in their wildest dreams. Parochialism is such that in today's Pakistan, entire establishment consists of few districts and few castes of North Punjab and small parts of Sindh. Characters like Dalrymple thrive on emotional manipulation, which is why Dalrymple needs to be questioned and refuted. This ends Dalrymple's book review. In another book review, we will deal with another disgracefully incorrect book, No Exit from Pakistan.